Alrighty. Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to our Soil Health Sampling and CEMA 216 workshop. My name is Courtney Cosden. I'm a soil health instructor with University of Idaho Extension and the USDA NRCS, and with me is Lucille.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucille Rollins. I'm an NRCS soil health specialist based here in Boise, Idaho. And I'll be playing tour guide today through the SEMA 216 document and help facilitating with our other speakers.
Okay. And then you're controlling the slides, right, Lucille?
Oh yeah, here we go.
Okay, so again, thank you for joining us. This is part one of a two-part workshop on soil health sampling and the SEMA 216. For those who are interested in just learning more about SEMA 216 and or interested in becoming a qualified individual to be able to help with the soil sampling that is required as part of SEMA 216. So today we're doing our part one, our virtual session. We'll be going for about 2 hours. It's a little loose. And feel free to hop on and off if you need to. We are going to be recording this session, and I think it'll live on one of the NRCS Teams channels, I'm sure, and then we can also post it on our U of I PALS Soil Health YouTube page for future reference. And then next week, 1 week from today, so on next Tuesday, we will be in the field in Kimberly doing the in-person part of this workshop, where we'll be practicing, like teaching folks and practicing how to collect and prepare composite samples in order to send them to the lab. And so I'm going to post a couple things in the chat. We have a registration link for, let me see. I have a I'll do this in just a second. We have a registration link for the in-person workshop for next week because we can really we have about capacity for around 25 folks. And then I'm also going to post, either me or Lucille will post this comment form or question form. We're not going to be taking a ton of questions today, but if you want to put questions into this question form later on and send them to us, we'll get those answers to you, as well as we have a PDF version of the PowerPoint that we're going to be going through today, which is full of a ton of great resources. So if you would like that PowerPoint as well, you can enter this into this form link that we will send to enter your questions. Okay, I think next, Lucille. Okay, and then going over the agenda today. So we're going to give, so Lucille's going to take over in a moment and we'll give a very, very brief overview of the tests in SEMA 216. And then Lucille will introduce our lab experts. So we have a few folks from some certified regional labs on the call to speak about their testing offerings. Then we'll go into a much deeper dive of the SEMA 216. We will talk about soil health testing scenarios and the testing suite. And then we'll go over a bunch of different resources. Next, yeah. Okay, and then we'll take a little bit of a break. That'll probably take 40 minutes or so. And then we'll take a little bit of a break, and we have some more professionals on the call that will talk about more practical aspects of being involved in the SEMA. Dean Smith with the NRCS will talk to us about how to organize the required pre-work conference with the NRCS. Shanna Bernal-Fields, who is also with the NRCS, will talk to us about soil sampling strategies and tools. And we'll end with Dr. Ross Spackman, who has been working with the SEMA with his students, and will talk to us about some kind of practical lessons from the field that they've learned. And then lastly, we will end with some logistics and some pre-work homework for our upcoming in-person field day next week. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucille to run us through this really quick before she introduces us to our lab facilitators and specialists.
All right, thanks, Courtney. So yeah, we scheduled the land managers first so they could easily hop on and off but we thought it would be helpful to just really quickly review which indicators are required and optional in CEMA 216, so you have a general sense of what's needed as as our lab managers share about what they offer. So there are 7 required indicators. So we have wet aggregate stability, soil organic carbon, soil respiration, labile carbon, bioavailable nitrogen, texture, and soil pH. And then if the participant would like to choose the advanced scenario, they can do either 1 or 3 additional indicators to fulfill the advanced scenario option. And so that would be either doing PLFA through for microbial diversity, or choosing to do 3 enzymes to fulfill the functional diversity requirement. So 7 indicators are required, and then 1 to 3 are optional. And so it looks like, Christy, I think you hopped on. I saw your name pop up.
I did. I'm on.
Oh, sweet. So glad you were able to join us. Christy's been doing a bunch of field work. So, Christy, I'll go ahead and let you take it away. I'm going to advance to. Oh, wait, actually, before I let you take it away, just real quick. So, these are the regional labs that are joining us today. We have 4, 1 in Utah, 2 here in Idaho, and then 1 in Washington. And these are all certified NAPT PAP labs. And they're going to share with us today updates about what they currently offer as far as soil health testing that's required by CEMA 216 and what they are planning to offer in the future. So for our lab folks with multiple slides, just say next when you're ready for me to advance, and I'll do that for you. And then, Christy, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. My name is Christy Mingus, and I'm the lead soil scientist at a nonprofit based in Logan, Utah. We're called Working Lands Conservation. And just a little bit about our organization as a whole, we focus on bringing science to conservation. We have a new lab, which is called the Ecosystem Services Lab, and we don't accept, we're not accepting samples at the moment, but we will be accepting contracts this fall once we get a lab manager. So we'll be NAPT and PAP certified hopefully this fall. We have capacity to measure everything in the basic soil health testing suite, in addition to labile carbon and soil respiration. And we're also able to expand our lab capacities based on the needs of the people that we serve. So if there's a heavy demand for other tests, we can work to accommodate those as well. And in addition to our lab capabilities and capacities, I also serve as a QI. I worked with NRCS's Soil Survey Division for 8.5 years, and I worked with Lucille actually for a while, so that was fun. So our lab does provide or aim to provide data to producers that's useful. So we're working to create reports that will help producers determine their sampling plan, as well as interpret their results in a place-based and goal-oriented way. So feel free to check out our website to learn more about Working Lands Conservation and our Ecosystem Services Lab. You can send me an email at christy@workinglandsconservation.org if you want more information, or you can keep checking our website to see when we are up and running and accepting contracts. So that's what I've got for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. I'm super excited to be working with you again in this capacity. Before passing the baton to Stukenholtz, I wanted to jump in to quickly share that for folks that want a complete CEMA 216, based off of Christy's slide, what you would need are essentially options 1 through 5, which would be 5 of the 7 required tests, and then an option for bioavailable nitrogen, and then also to complete soil respiration using either the 24 or 96-hour incubation. So, awesome. Paul, are you ready for us?
Sure.
Okay, I'll let you take it away.
Well, good morning. I'm Paul Stukenholtz with Stukenholtz Laboratory out of Twin Falls, Idaho. We've been in business since 1970, and we do most of the commercial soil sampling for the Great Basin Intermountain area. Our specialty is high pH soils, calcareous, saline alkali soils, essentially those soils that are traditionally have been arid before irrigation, and so they tend to test actually very low on most of these soil health indicators. As far as the specific testing for the CEMA 216, we've made a test that is designed to supply all the basic requirements for it. So it's the test with the methods that you see there. Price we're looking at is $175, although there's a little bit of flex in what's going on with that price and the exact methods as we get the proper equipment in order to do all these. Contact information is at the bottom, and also definitely look at our website. Next, please. As far as taking the samples, there's a couple of important points. One is you really have to take 2 separate samples at each field, and that's because of the nature of the tests. If we skip actually to the bottom, most of the CEMA 216 tests are taken like traditional chemical soil quality indicators. So things like pH, salts, nitrate, nitrogen, phosphorus, and so forth. Now, from a nationwide standpoint, the soil depths have traditionally been different for arid soils versus soils that get more water, specifically the acid soils. So in most of the country, the tradition is a 0 to 6 inch sample because they're predicting how much lime is going to be put on those acid soils that are going to be blended in. In arid soils, the traditional depth is 0 to 12 inches, so down to 30 centimeters. And that's because in arid soils, we're looking at the fertility of the entire top foot. In fact, for most of the university recommendations, we will actually take a separate sample, 12 to 24 inches, and then sometimes a third one, 24 to 36 inches. In those cases, the sample is taken with a probe, and the idea is to evenly mix up all of those subsamples from a single management area into one. Basically, these are the soil samples like you're probably used to taking. But specifically to get the soil wet aggregate stability test, we can't have samples that are taken with a probe or that are blended together. So it's done differently. You have to take the sample with a knife or shovel, and you do it from the very surface, intact clods from 0 to 2 inches deep, which means they also need to be packed in a separate bag. So in short, to meet all the CEMA 216 tests, we need to have 2 separate samples from each field or management unit that you're sampling from. Next. And then just finally, an example of the sheet that we have come up with that should give you what you need for the CEMA 216. We can output our data in many different forms, including spreadsheets, but for this particular one sheet would match one field or management unit. The results would be in the column on the left. A very brief description of what the result means and the method that's used is in the center. And then on the column on the right, it shows where it fits within those CEMA 216 requirements as either a preferred or an alternate method on that. And that is it. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. This is awesome. It's cool to see how quickly you guys have put all this together for participants looking to do CEMA 216. I'm going to jump back really quick to Paul's second slide. Just want to share here that this is one of the guidelines in CEMA 216 as part of this process is to contact the labs to get their specific instructions about how to collect these samples. So Paul's pointing out that they want 2 separate, samples submitted, one specifically for wet aggregate stability. Not every lab is going to have the same requirement. So again, a good reminder of why it's important to speak with the lab before doing soil health sampling collection. So just a follow-up question, Paul, are you also asking folks to ship this in a hard-sided container or just shipping in the bag is okay?
Shipping in the bag is okay.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Ready, thank you.
Yeah. I think, Ryan, you're up next. And I saw you in the participant list.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Ryan Foster,
Yeah.
I'm the lab director here at the University of Idaho Analytical Sciences Lab. We've done a lot of work over the last few years to get more engaged with stakeholders within the state, as well as just trying to get out there more. We've been here since the mid 80s, but soils have been new to us over the last 20 years, and we haven't really made a big push. And this opportunity with CEMA and to speak today wanted to make sure we were here. So right now we are currently developing the testing to be available hopefully in the early fall and then fully online for next season. I've got outlined there the different analyses, the method we'll be targeting, as well as the general cost area we should be for each one. And then I also wanted to make sure we included that we are doing other soil fertility here as well. Now we have our different levels of our standard fertility, as well as the older NRCS testing. Any questions, feel free to give us a call. I forgot our email on there. It's asl@uidaho.edu, and check out our website. We should have a new website up later this year as well, and a lot more information coming out with some great changes to better serve the state of Idaho and anyone who would like to use this. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And no worries about the email. Feel free to drop that in the chat if you'd like, and folks can follow up with you directly. And I guess just a quick clarification question for the enzymes. Is the $65 for all 3 enzymes or for each individual enzyme?
So that would be for the set of 3.
The set of 3. Okay. Cool. All right. And did you say a specific time that you're coming online with these?
We should be. No, you're good. Hopefully this fall we'll have them available, and then we'll be for sure for the new year. So in 27 we'll have them going start of the year. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing today.
Thank you.
Okay, and then up next we've got Kyle Blair from Soil Test Farm Consultants, but I'm not sure that he was in the chat participant list. Kyle, are you with us? Okay, it looks like he didn't make it. No worries. So Soil Test Farm Consultants is out of Moses Lake, Washington, and they do offer all of the soil testing as required by the CEMA. So this is this first slide is a list of their general offerings, but participants could also call and ask specifically for the soil health test suite. And so he included this table on this slide. So you can see the individual costs for each of those indicators and the methods that they are using. And then they also, after the samples are analyzed, will send folks a report. One thing I was going to ask is if this report will look differently if they're just selecting the soil health test indicators as required by the CEMA 216, but I suppose that'll be a follow-up question to Kyle later on. So that concludes our section for our lab managers. Thank you so much again for sharing this information with us. Hopefully it's helpful to the audience to know what options are out there. And so especially that are local. So Christy, Paul, Ryan, and Kyle, or no, not Kyle, Christy, Paul, and Ryan, please feel free to drop your contact information directly in the chat so folks can reach out to you if they have follow-up questions. Okay, so now starts the tour of our CEMA 216 document. So I guess I'm making an assumption that you've at least seen this, but might not be super familiar with it. So wanted to start off by saying that CEMA 216 predates the Regen pilot program. So that's why we're talking about it today, right? Because this is a required component of the Regen pilot program. It's required to be completed in the first and last year or the 5th year of the contract. But yeah, this came into being before the Regen pilot program and has evolved into its current version. So when looking this up, please make sure that you're referencing the most current version of it and that keep in mind that there may be updates in the coming fiscal years. A little background about that. There are discussions right now about additional methods being added to the list of allowable methods for the indicators. So we'll want to keep an eye out for potential changes in fiscal year 27. So yeah, CEMA 216 is a USDA program that provides support for soil health testing. And you can see here it's defined as quantitative testing for biological, chemical, and physical characteristics of soil and constraints using approved laboratory methods. And today our examples are going to be cropland, but this can be used in forest and rangeland settings as well. Okay, let's see. So in terms of how this document is designed, it's a 9-page document and it has these general sections. So we have a requirement section that outlines the requirements for the QI, general requirements, and technical requirements. The bulk of this document is dedicated to technical requirements. And then we also have a section that outlines the deliverables, a section that talks about post-testing analysis, and then references, which includes the methods which includes references for the allowable methods for the indicators. And so I'm guessing most of you have seen and heard about the requirements for QI. So I'll very quickly go over this. Essentially, the QI is either has a certification as a crop advisor or a soil scientist, or as a TSP, or they have an associate degree or higher with experience collecting soil, or they can be someone working under the guidance of the QI. And Maureen Pepper, who is normally our state contact for technical service providers, shared that the website for TSPs has been updated. So if you're interested in being a TSP, this information should be a lot easier to find. And on the last side, I pointed out this is self-certifying. So what does that mean? That means no training is required. And it means that all the QI has to do is when they submit their deliverables on the cover page, they're going to include a statement about how they meet the QI requirements for the CEMA. And so that could be including their certification name and number, agricultural retail or business name, or a brief written statement indicating how they meet those requirements. So the QI requirements is the first requirement section. The second requirement section is general requirements, which is really short. Basically, this section is asking the QI to review the CEMA 216 document. Everything they need to know is in the document. It's also telling QIs that they need to arrange a pre-work conference. And so that pre-work conference happens before sampling and is a meeting between the QI, NRCS staff, and the participant. And Dean Smith is with us today, and he'll share more about this part of the process after our short break. And then the last part of the general requirements is pointing out that the QI can use the electronic field office technical guide as a resource. What might be most useful in here is there are references for the conservation practice standards and the CEMA, and also some information about our in-field soil health assessment that could be useful. So the meatiest part of CEMA 216, this takes up pages 2 through 5, is the technical requirements. There are 2 sections under the technical requirements. We have all soil testing and soil health sample collection. So the all soil testing is the largest of these 2 sections, and we're going to share more about each of these, subsections in the coming slides. And then the second part of the technical requirements is on page 5. This is the soil health sample collection, and it talks about pre-work that needs to be completed as well as the in-field protocol. And this part of the document points out that for the sampling itself, within the field, there are going to be 3 main locations with 5 total subsamples collected at or near each main location, mixed to make 1 total composite sample. So in an effort to, diagram that, we have a field here with the cairns marking our 3 main locations. And so at or near these 3 main locations, we're collecting 5 subsamples. So one of those subsamples is at the main location, and then the other 4 radiate out 20 to 50 feet. And so for each set of 5 subsamples, some amount of that the lab says they'll need will become the composite sample. So there are 3 composite samples total, collected for each sampling area and then submitted to the lab. So once we've got the pre-work conference done, sample collection done, that sample is shipped off, and results / the report is received, then we can start thinking about deliverables. And so the CEMA 216 document outlines the deliverables. If folks are interested, I made a spreadsheet that is a checklist for the CEMA 216 document. So that is something that we can share with you. But otherwise, yeah, in the CEMA 216 document, it'll outline what you need to submit. So the first is a cover page, which I referenced earlier because it's on that page that as a QI, you will document how you are qualified to do the CEMA 216 work. There's also a requirement to submit notes and correspondence about the work pertaining to CEMA 216, maps, diagrams, and plan views, and then also a section that asks for a report under the evaluation or monitoring results section. So if every part of the process is documented, most likely you'll have all the information you'll need to complete the deliverables. So documentation should include decisions made during the pre-work conference, documentation of sampling work, including the GPS coordinates for the 3 main locations, and the reports is shared by the lab completing the soil health testing. So the report is going to include a description of the sampling strategy used, sample ID codes, lab results, and then the result interpretations and or observations. And so once all of that is put together, you'll want to make 2 sets of all these items, and those will go to the participant. The qualified individual may also hand off a set of completed work, so one of these 2 sets, to the local NRCS office once they get authorization from the participant to do so. So I'm jumping back to one of the deliverables. So on the report, it asks, or under the evaluation or monitoring results section, it lists out to include test result interpretations, less observations, to include outputs from soil health models or tools used if applicable. So I wanted to share an example of a soil health model. I guess really the only soil health model that we have right now that you could use. So this is called SHAPE. So what we're seeing down here at the bottom of the slide is a screenshot. And SHAPE stands for Soil Health Assessment Protocol and Evaluation. And it's a quantitative interpretive tool that can be used for soil health results. And what they've done with this particular model is they aggregate data by climatic and inherent soil properties. So users can have some confidence the tool is comparing apples to apples, and they can see where their soil health results land compared to the aggregate for select indicators. Admittedly, this is a tool that is still new to me, and they've done a lot of work actually on this dashboard just in the past couple of months. But if you end up getting results and would like to work through this together, feel free to contact me. It'd be cool to have some data to plug in here. And so the other section under deliverables is post-testing analysis. And so what is asked here is that results be submitted to this email address, soilhealthtest@usda.gov. And I've included the screenshot of the SHAPE model here because the results that are received will be anonymized and used to improve the SHAPE model. So as we get more data, if you come back and plug in your soil health test results, you might actually see that the score changes because the model is improving, which could be really cool to see. So an important note is that the deliverables, the QI can submit deliverables directly to the NRCS and submit results and GPS sampling coordinates to soilhealthtest@usda.gov, once the participant gives their authorization. Otherwise, it would be the participant themselves that submits those deliverables and submits the results. So that's a review of the CEMA 216 document and the information in it. So now we're going to do a deeper dive into the testing scenarios. And so this is under the technical requirements under all soil testing. In 3 tables, it outlines what the basic and advanced testing options are. So as we talked about earlier, 7 indicators are required, and this is in tables 1 and 2. And then the participant has the option to do an advanced testing, which would be 1 to 3 additional indicators, depending on whether they're focusing on microbial or functional diversity. And so this is table 1, and we can see that this encompasses the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of soil. We have a preferred or an alternate method. Pretty much for all these indicators, we have the one preferred method and then one alternate. The methods for aggregation include a third alternate method, which was added in the past couple months. So that would be the Slake app, which is referred to in the document as image analysis. And then under table 2, we have our, I guess, probably more typical soil test indicators. We have soil texture and soil pH. We're grabbing these for soil health testing because we want to have, or because we know that inherent soil properties will influence a soil's soil health potential. So we want to make sure, again, we're comparing at least apples to apple-ish. And for each of these, we have the one preferred method and then an alternate method. And then finally, under table 3, we have our advanced or optional indicators. And so the preferred method for this would be the phospholipid fatty acid, or PLFA, which gives us some idea of microbial biomass and microbial community structure. And then alternately, they could choose to do a total of 3 enzymes. Different enzymes play different roles in nutrient cycling, like the phosphorus cycle or the sulfur cycle. So they could choose to do this instead. These tests are very sensitive to temperature and moisture. So part of the reason we want to be consistent about when and where we're sampling. I'll say that in the process of contacting labs to figure out what they're offering, there are probably only a handful of labs that offer PLFA, and then even fewer that offer the 3 enzymes. So the enzymes aren't, these tests aren't as common. And so one question that's been asked is, what about the Haney test, and does it meet the requirements of CEMA 216? Most reliably, the two, I guess, methods included in a Haney test that could be reliably put towards completing the CEMA 216 would be water extractable organic carbon and water extractable organic nitrogen, which are alternate methods for both of these categories. So with one Haney test, you could at least get these 2 indicators completed. So under the technical requirements, that also outlines what is required for lab certification. And so labs must have 1 of 4 certifications. The one that I found to be the most easiest to search is through the North American Proficiency Testing Performance Assessment Program, which is hosted on the Soil Science Society of America website. And I'll have some screenshots from their website here in a moment. But there are 3 other options. The middle 2, I didn't find a great directory to use to search for labs. And then as of right now, we do not have a state-approved certification program. So I am sharing this resource here because just outlining the importance of verifying that the lab is certified and where that can be documented. So one of the resources that the NRCS Soil Health Division put together for qualified individuals is a job aid And it is a 4-page document. The first 2 pages talk about the indicators, the methods, the importance of the indicators. And on the last 2 pages, it's basically a way to document what analysis the lab will be doing and what their instructions are for sampling. And as part of that, you are asking the lab or verifying with the lab what their lab certification is. So this is the NAPT-PAP website, and you can go here to see a list of labs that are doing soil testing. I just want to point out that not all labs offering soil health not all labs offer soil health testing, and not all labs with soil health testing offer the test as required by CEMA 216. They just released this PDF document in the middle of the page maybe 2 months ago. And so this can be a good starting point. This is what the PDF would look like if you pulled it up. And so a lot of information on here. What we have across the top is a list of NAPT-PAP labs doing soil testing. And then on the in the brown box, we have the different methods that the labs are getting certified for. So my understanding is NAPT-PAP is shifting towards certifying for specific methods, which is something that they haven't done in the past. So that's why there are a lot of blank boxes on this table. They anticipate that it'll start to get filled out in subsequent versions. But this is the first page of the document. And then on the 3rd page of the document, they have a soil health section. And they've included a note up here at the top that for 2026, NRCS is allowing NAPAP labs to do soil health testing. An important note is that the lab still needs to offer all testing as required by CEMA 216. So this table, again, it's looking pretty sparse right now, but could be a good starting point to identify labs that are doing soil health testing in addition to the labs that we heard from today. So this is our last section before the break. I wanted to point out existing resources for qualified individuals, as well as for NRCS staff and program participants if they're interested. So the first one is the CEMA 216 document, the current version being January 2026 R. And I guess, yeah, like Courtney said at the beginning, if you're interested in getting a PDF version of this PowerPoint, we can send that off to you. Just let us know by filling out that Microsoft form, and you'll get the PDF with all the links. So yeah, the first resource is the CEMA 216 document. And then there's a bunch of other stuff too. So the NRCS Soil Health Division has a bunch of technical publications on soil health related topics. A couple that might be pertinent to this audience is the document on field grab sampling. They also have a really comprehensive document that provides background information on soil health testing called Soil Health Testing to Support Conservation Planning. They talk about the indicators and why they were chosen and what interpretation looks like right now. And then they also authored this year a job aid, which I referenced earlier, and that's a worksheet to document lab offerings and sampling instructions. And then they also put together an FAQ document, and that document outlines key pieces of information about CEMA 216, including the goals, designs, and work of the program. And so if you click on that job aid and FAQ link, it brings you to a website that lists both of those documents. And then, of course, we have NAPT-PAP, which identifies certified labs, and then that TSP page if you're interested in more information about becoming a TSP. And then finally, I've listed here a Soil Health Division conservation webinar. So this, I think, came out back in February. It's an hour-long webinar that talks again about why we're doing this specific soil health testing and then the implementation of the CEMA 216 program specifically. So that's the first hour. And then the remaining time is dedicated to Q&A. So I'll just go through this real quick so we can get to our break. This is an example of what it would look like if you pulled up the website where these tech notes live. So we refer to this as e-directives. So on the right-hand side, you can see I've selected tech notes, and we have a long list here. So those 2 tech notes that I've listed at the top are in this list. If we were going to select soil health testing to support conservation planning, it would pull up a separate window. And usually there's an announcement describing what this document is, and then the actual document itself. It isn't consistent. The actual document is sometimes the first listing, sometimes it's the second one. So you might have to click around to figure out which one it is. In this case, it's the second option. But this is what the general format of them and what you'd expect to see. It'll have the, I guess, category of tech note, which is soil health, and then the tech note reference number and the title along with the contents page. And then this is the, I guess, 3rd page of the job aid, where it starts the tables where you can document lab offerings and their sampling instructions. So you start with the information about the general information, and then going further down that page, there is a table here where you can indicate which methods the lab allows, or which methods the lab offers, and which ones you're going to go with, or which one you're going to go with. And then this is the webpage for the conservation webinar. And if you, the link itself will go to the webinar, but if you just went to this webpage, you can also search by topic. And if you put in CEMA 216, it will pull up this webinar that I'm referencing right now. Okay, so that is the first part of our workshop today. And then up next, we'll take a 5-minute break. And then after that, we have Dean Smith joining us to talk about the pre-work conference.
Okay, I'm Dean Smith. I'm the Area East Agronomist, and currently I'm overlooking a potato field. Next. So the parts of 216 I wanted to cover, the QI producer and NRCS meeting. It is very, very important that you do that. I've unfortunately worked with a couple that that was missed, or only 2 of them came, and all 3 of them need to be there. What happens is if you just meet with the producer and not with the QI, then a lot of that information will not get passed on to them so they can do everything they need to. In a minute, I'll cover 217 and some issues that can be confusing there too. First of all, of course, is soil sampling requirements. And most of that is that with 216, there are actually 3 composite samples that are done, and the CEMA 216 talks about that. The next part is the report. And of course, that report is very important, and they need to look at all that CEMA to see what that report entails. And of course, Lucille covered the outline of that report. And then as far as the NRCS is concerned, on CEMAs, you look at the report and make sure it matches that CEMA before you pay on it. And of course, on that, as far as, do I have job approval authority? CEMAs do not have JAA, so anybody can sign off on them. And all I do on those is when I do them is I just double check to make sure the outline in the CEMA 216 matches with the report that the QI provides. And then also contact the lab for shipping and handling requirements, because each of the labs, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, they're going to be a little bit different depending on the lab, and they need to contact them beforehand to make sure that whatever samples that they need are done correctly. And especially if they need to be refrigerated, or, how many days before you send it off was it sent, because these are biological things that you're sending it off for. On the basic, there's basic and advanced payments. Basic is the 7 items to be tested, and advanced is 8 items tested. And that is listed in that CEMA, and it will say even before the PLFA, before that in the paragraph, it'll say this is for advanced, to add that 8th item as well to be tested. when I've met with the QI and the producer, and in that meeting, please provide a copy of the CEMA. That way they've got an outline, both the producer and the QI, so that they're going, okay, we know exactly what we need to do. And then, oh, I can't see that because my screen's popped up other stuff. Make sure you're using the correct CEMA 216 for the year of your contract. Some of you have some older CEMA 216s, and some will have the new CEMA 216. Make sure you have the correct version, because if you have an older contract, the CEMA 216, those original ones, I've got like I think it's 6 different copies for depending on the year. Those are more original ones for those older contracts, only required 1 item to be tested, where the new ones require for basic 7 and the advanced 8 items. So please make sure you've got the correct one. And then, like Lucille mentioned, make sure it's the CEMA 216 with the R on there. Because there was a CEMA that was put out, and then like a couple months later, the R came out. And so if you just did a search, you could end up with the wrong CEMA. Please look at the date on the bottom. Okay, next slide. Okay, now I want to cover CEMA 217 as well, because a lot of times in some of these contracts, especially these newer ones, we're going to be doing CEMA 216 and CEMA 217. 216 is the soil health, and that's easier because it's alphabetical. Soil health. CEMA 217 is for the soil testing, like your normal chemical testing. And so the number's later, alphabetically it's later, CEMA 217. Now, when you do this pre-work, you have to do a pre-work conference with this CEMA as well. The thing is, if you try to do them both at the same time and intermix, they're going to be confused, because the requirements for 216 and 217 are different in the report. And then, of course, the soil sampling itself is different. It is different. So, like I met with an individual, and then we're going to meet with a QI later on, just so he could understand what he was getting himself into. And I covered the 216 first. Okay, went over the sampling. You got it? Yes, got it. Then I went over the 217, and I says, okay, now we're breaking and we're going to something completely different. It sounds the same, but it is not. So you do need the QI producer NRCS meeting. Like I say, they're probably going to want to do them both on the same day. And so please make sure they understand the soil sampling requirements there. Also, there's a U of I bulletin that covers the soil sampling, and if needs be, I can send you a copy of that. Some of you may have an older one, but there is a newer one that's out. The reporting requirements for the CEMA 217 are different than the CEMA 216. They're just different. The 590 soil sample, the soil sample is taken differently. Like Paul talked about earlier, that's usually a 1 and a 2 foot sample. It is way different than the CEMA 216. Then also some of you are putting in there 590 and are doing a manure sample. There is a U of I bulletin for the manure sampling as well, and that can be for 590 as well as fertilizer. And there is a particular bulletin, like I said earlier, for manure sampling. And then, of course, some of you with 217 may be doing 336, which is soil carbon amendment. There are different requirements under 336 than 590 for manure, even though you might be sampling some compost in both the manure sample and the soil carbon amendment. But if you pick 336, the list is a lot longer, a whole lot longer. And we're doing like some heavy metals and all that in the soil carbon amendment. So just be aware of that. And then there again, provide a copy of the CEMA so that they have that in front of them and have the outline for that report. Like I said, 217 and 216 are different, and the requirements are different. The report requirements are they're different. They're not exactly the same. Okay. Next slide. And then, of course, there's my contact if you have any questions. Anyway, thank you. And then, like I say, let me know if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Dean, and for including the tidbit about SEMA 217. For folks that aren't familiar with 217, I'm just going to jump back real quick. The QI requirements for this SEMA are also different. So in addition to all the other differences, that is something worth paying attention to if you have a participant that needs this done. And then I'm actually going to interrupt our flow. I think Kyle from Soil Test Farm Consultants just hopped on. Kyle, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. I'm wondering if the time zone got us.
Oh no!
Is that what? Okay. So we've proceeded, but I'm gonna jump back to
Oh
your
my gosh,
slides.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks for thanks for coming. I'm just jumping back to your slide. All right, so this is the first slide we had for you. So I'll let you take it away.
Okay, yeah, my apologies for that. I'm Kyle Barron with Soil Test Farm Consultants. I've been with the company for 18 years. We started in 1976, and so we've been operating. This is our 50th year of operation. And about 10-ish years ago, we started doing some work in the soil health realm, starting off with, doing POC and soil respiration measurements. And then we've kind of expanded to here's our list of offerings that we have now. And, these are the individual prices for the specific soil health um, items. But I believe on the next slide, there's some things that are specific to the SEMA testing requirements that we also offer. So this is a similar list, but it includes the pH and texture, things that we consider quote unquote normal. So, anyway, we've been doing these analyses for the better part of 6 or 7 years. Um, and on a given year, the number of soil health samples that we run through kind of depends on the researchers. I'd say that 90+% of the samples that we get that are requesting things like soil respiration, active carbon, ACE protein are coming from the universities. I could probably count on one hand the number that are coming from like individuals. So, that being said, it's a little bit, normally when we do a soil analysis, if someone sends in a sample and wants just pH, we can get that cranked out next day. With these things, because we batch them, it can take on the order of several weeks to get a sample returned. Um, but anyway, I believe there's one more slide. Here's kind of the report formats that we offer. The one on the left, it includes all of our typical everyday analyses from pH to organic matter, and it'll include texture, as you can see here. And we even make a calculation on the texture to include water holding capacity. And then on the one on the right, it includes most of the parameters that we would have for a soil health sample. So organic carbon, POC, and so on are listed there. You'll notice that a few of them don't have like a low, average, or high range on them. Um, I just haven't committed to that quite yet, but where it's being used for relative terms, from one practice to the next, I think the most meaningful comparisons are made from year to year on the same field and following a certain practice or input. So this is just a quick example of what we have to offer.
All right. Thanks so much, Kyle.
You bet.
Yeah. And then if you'd like to drop your contact information in the chat, feel free to do that so folks can reach out to you with questions if they have any
I'll do
for
it.
you.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and then, or wait, exit the PowerPoint here, maybe. And then get back to where we were. Okay, so up next we have Shanna to talk about sampling strategies and tools.
Good morning, everyone. Shanna Bernal-Fields, soil scientist here at Boise. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about sampling strategies and 3 tools that are available. There's others. If you're following along in the CEMA, this portion is covered starting at the bottom of page 3. So they recommend you either use one or combination of the following strategies. So we've got stratified. This is a good option when you have a diverse PLU that either has multiple landscape positions or several differing soils, because we want to compare apples to apples. The sampling locations are chosen randomly within subareas or strata that you define. So a map unit, for example. The next strategy is random. This is a good choice if you have a very consistent PLU with one primary soil. Sampling locations are chosen random from a grid. And then the third one is called problematic. And that's when you have a very distinct area that I would say is either over or underperforming from the rest. So again, we want to compare apples to apples. So if you have something odd going on, you would separately sample that. Next slide, please. So some other items to consider, be aware of utilities. It's always a good idea to call 811 if there might be some infrastructure nearby. You might want to avoid the edge effect. In my experience, that usually has more compaction and influence from surrounding areas, aim more for the core of the unit. And as has been stated several times today, but never hurts to remind people, a point consists of a primary, like in the middle, in this image here, the star in the middle, and then 4 satellites around the edges makes up the composite. And then you need 3 of those per PLU. So in this slide here, I have the same field using 3 different strategies. So just take a second. Does anything pop out at you? Do you notice anything? And then which strategy would you pick? So the image on the left was using the problem area strategy, because I noticed in the imagery where the diamond in the lower right is, there's obviously something different going on there. We have a total difference, a production difference. And in my experience, I would guess that that's actually probably an inclusion of a different minor soil. So yeah, that would be sampled separately from the rest of this pivot, which is all mapped as one map unit 44. The center image used the random point method. Although I'm not a big fan of this one because we've got some, especially that lower left point is right on the field edge. Not my favorite. I wouldn't choose that one. And then the right image, we have the stratified sampling scheme, and it ended up going basically a transect right across the middle. And it's near that oddball inclusionary area, but not directly in it. So, I mean, that one potentially could work too. But for my eye, I personally like the left strategy the best. Next slide. Okay, so some tools out there. There's several available. The primary one mentioned in the CEMA is from ARS. It's the Spot tool. It's available online. There's also another website-based one from open source called the Random Point Generator. And then if you happen to have an Esri license, there's actually a built-in tool in one of the toolboxes in ArcPro. Next slide, please. So Spot, this is a snapshot from their website. So it's kind of like Web Soil Survey in that you draw a box around your area of interest or your field of interest, PLU, whatever verbiage you want to use there. And then you get a choice between two algorithms. You can either choose random or by soil zone. As a soil scientist, I'm always going to say choose soil zone so that you're comparing apples to apples. And then you can also tell it the maximum number of points that you want. You can tell that, okay, so then after you run the tool, you do have some more capabilities. It has an edit button. So you could potentially, if you had like one on the edge, move it over a smidge or add some points. It will even generate a path that you can take between sampling points. And you have several download options. You can choose from either the lat long or UTM. You could do a CSV for spreadsheets. You can do a shapefile for use in Arc Pro, or you can even use a KML for Google Earth. Next slide, please. And that's, yeah, just mentioning those four different download options. Okay. And then here's another freely available online tool, the random point generator. A lot of overlap in utility with the Spot, although this one didn't have as many download options. It mainly just does the CSV, but you can also, again, draw your area of interest or PLU, and it'll do random point generation. Next slide, please. And then if you have Arc Pro or similar GIS, Esri has the Create Spatial Sampling Location tool, and that is found in the Data Management Toolbox. It has 4 different sampling strategies available: simple, random, stratified, systematic, and cluster. I would either go with the random or the stratified. That follows along best with the CEMA. The next slide, please. And then that's just an example of that I did the other day playing with it in Arc Pro. I chose that pivot field I showed earlier. I told it only look at this one map unit and give me random. And so and then it made my point layer and threw it in my project. So I was like, oh, that's convenient. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shanna. It's nice to know about these tools available for that part of the process. So moving on, we're going to talk about the actual sampling. And so talk about what is discussed in the CEMA 216 itself. And then we also have Dr. Ross Spackman from BYU-Idaho to talk about his work using the CEMA 216 protocol for sampling. So again, this part of the process is documented under the technical requirements. And so under all soil testing, which is the, I guess, bulkier part of this section, it talks about how to treat your equipment. So we want to ensure all equipment is clean and free from residue. If conducting phospholipid fatty acid, if conducting that analysis, we want to sanitize sampling equipment in between collection of composite samples, or at least that's what is recommended by the Soil Health Division. And then unless we're employing a sampling strategy used to specifically look at variability, we want to avoid the following areas. And so these are areas with more disturbance, more traffic. We want to avoid collecting samples on different landscape positions, in areas with different crops or rotations, or within the field or within a field with the same crop collecting. We want to avoid collecting fields from, say, inter-row or management row. And then we also want to avoid collecting samples from saturated soil, unless, again, the point of the sampling strategy or the goal of the participant is to look at variability within the field. And so within the same section of the CEMA, it asks us here to remain consistent with subsequent sampling by doing the following things. So using the same georeferenced locations, employing the same sampling strategy, collecting soil under similar conditions, collecting soil at the same time of year, utilizing the same lab tests and methods, and utilizing the same laboratory. If we're able to remain consistent in these ways, it allows us to, I guess, draw a conclusion about what effect our conservation practices have had on the soil health status of the soil, and make sure that we're comparing, again, apples to at least apple-ish. And then in the second part of the technical requirement section, we have soil health sample collection. And so under this section, it gives advice about the actual collection protocol. So when practical, use a tile, spade, sharpshooter, or straight shovel. If absolutely needed, a 1-inch probe may be used. So at least, I guess maybe that should say at least a 1-inch probe may be used. So we don't want to be using a smaller probe than that. If using the shovel, we want to dig a hole to 8 inches deep, at least 8 inches deep, and then remove a 2-inch thick vertical rectangular slice of soil that is 6 to 8 inches long from the side of the hole. And so on the left, this was Courtney and I out practicing the protocol the other day. The hori knife part is 6 inches long. So that's about how much soil you'll be working with at each subsample. And then also want to point out, we also tried using a regular shovel spade, and that didn't work as well because of the curved sides of the shovel. So don't recommend using that tool. So on the shovel, we have one of the subsamples, right? We're going to collect 5 of those. Once you collect 5, it'll fill about the entirety of a 1-gallon bucket. So probably nice to have a little bit bigger bucket than that. But you'll collect the amount from this bucket after mixing to the amount specified by the lab. And that'll go into the bag, which will have a label. At a minimum, the Soil Health Division recommends including on that label the location, name, and date collected. So as an example, they note fence row collected on May 3rd of 2025. Okay, Ross, are you with us?
I am. Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can, yeah. I'll go
All
ahead
right.
and let you share with us about your experience.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Lucille and I met a couple of months ago at a meeting here in Rexburg, and I got to hear a little about the CEMA 216. And this semester, I'm teaching a soil management class, a 400 level soils class, and thought, well, let's use the latest, greatest things that are happening in the world of soils and try it in my class. So I have some QIs in training here, out sampling on one of the fields owned by the university. This was just within the past couple of weeks, we took this picture. This is an alfalfa field. It's fairly uniform. It's sprinkler irrigated. There were no real anomalies on a 1.5% slope or so, but everything was pretty uniform. Okay, next slide. I was trying to teach the students how to do proper protocol for making sure your equipment's clean. And here you can see they're washing their shovels and washing their buckets. And we used a bucket that maybe it was a little bigger than yours, Lucille, but it's about maybe a 2-gallon bucket. Next. And we used GPS to reference where we were in the field, and then use tape measures to mark the satellite holes. And it seemed to be pretty straightforward. Next, please. We collected the samples, and I had them physically measure the dimensions so they would know how wide and how long. The question that I had that we came up on this is just really how wide should these be? We take a 2-inch slice from the side of the hole, but does it need to be as wide as the shovel? Because that's quite a bit of sample there. We went ahead and shaved it off a little bit, but that was one observation I had for the group is, do you want that much sample? And, generally we say more samples better, but this is quite a bit of sample. Next, please. We composited the samples together, and then following the protocol from Stukenholtz lab, we collected them. The picture on the right is filling the sample bags, and they asked us to submit 2 of their sample bags, which I labeled according to their instructions. And we talked about sampling locations as a class and why you would do certain things the way that you do them, and just trying to teach them good field practices. Next. Again, how much sample is too much? As you can see here, we got 7 inches wide. That's quite a bit of sample, but if that's what the protocol mandates, then that's fine too. Just a question we had. Next, please. Any questions? We had Lucille and I talked about compaction or potential compaction around the hole as well, but we can talk about that another time. I think she was going to relay that information on, or that question on, to some of the other folks.
Yeah.
It's good for students. They enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. So you guys shipped those samples off to Stukenholtz, right?
Yeah, we did.
Or you?
We sent them off last week.
Okay, cool. How long will it take to get the results back?
They said they thought it would be done by now, but I haven't seen the results yet. We didn't do any micro work on it. It was just all the physical tests that they are able to perform. And there's a drop site here locally that we were able to utilize. So it went pretty smooth.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing about your experience, and look forward to hearing about the results for the samples you submitted.
All right.
Lucille, I have a question
All right.
on the sample quantity that I'm getting back to Ross's question about how much is too much. Is my understanding that's been left as an open question? Are you looking for guidance on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I meant to address that. We spoke with the Soil Health Division, and what we came up with was a 2-inch width is sufficient.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you're getting the central point plus 4 satellite locations. You're going to have a pretty representative sample, and if you're going full width of the shovel, by the time you get that together, then creating a composite that's well mixed becomes a pretty onerous chore. So, yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So, 2 inches, good answer.
Essentially, 2 inch.
Thank you for that, Sean.
2 inch by 2 inch, 8 inch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
2 by 2 by 6 to 8.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
So
to me.
So in the photo that I shared earlier on with the sample on the shovel, that was approximately a 2 by 2 by 6 or 7, and that easily filled up a 1-gallon bucket once we had all 5 subsamples in there. So any more would be quite a bit.
Yeah. What about the compaction along this edge of the hole?
Oh, yeah, I asked that question of a lab yesterday, and so I'll actually talk about that in a subsequent slide.
Okay, that's fine.
I've got you, Ross. Okay. So what we've covered up to this point is, we wanted to basically do a tour of the CEMA 216 document and provide some resources and tools to use to help complete the work. And so now we're coming up on the end of our workshop today, and we're going to be talking about the upcoming field day. And so as part of this, I'll share some logistical information, but then also walk through some of the pre-work that a QI would be expected to do prior to conducting the actual sampling. So for folks that are interested in joining us next week, we're going to be out at the University of Idaho Kimberly Research and Extension Center. So if the address is shared there, if you end up getting this PDF, you can click on that. It'll link you on Google Maps. So yeah, this will be from 8:30 to, we're estimating, about 11:30 in the morning. Because of the capacity of the conference room and tools, we're limiting this event to 25 participants. So please register. The link will be in the PDF. I think it's in the chat. And then we also have it on the flyer. And so the field we'll be working in is that top right field that is boxed in orange. It's currently fallow. So as part of the pre-work, wanted to think about what sampling strategy to employ. And so what I have here is the field under with satellite imagery and with the topo from Web Soil Survey. So we have the orange box with the field itself, and then the curvy orange line is the delineation of two different map units, so soil survey map units. And so what we see on the right-hand side is that the field that we'll be in is mapped as being all the same map unit, which is a Bayham silt loam that's on the right. And so because we have the same mapped soil, because we don't see any crazy landforms popping up, and because no specific problem areas were noted as we were picking out this field, we're going to go with a random sampling strategy. And so to identify points for this, I used the random point generator that Shanna talked about. I tried using Spot, but I think because the field is so small, the area of interest we're drawing is so small, it would only give me 2 max points. So I used this tool instead. So I drew my area of interest, indicated that I needed 3 points. I hit download CSV, and it showed me the points on the screen. And when I open that CSV file in Excel, I get the 3 GPS coordinates down there at the bottom. So now we have our GPS coordinates. And so the other resource that the Soil Health Division provides is this job aid, which again is a document meant to provide a description of the indicators and the methods and their importance. But then on the 3rd and 4th page, we have this worksheet to document what the lab will do as far as analysis and what their instructions are. So in the top part of the form, it asks me to indicate which scenario we're going with. So this is a drop down, and you can do either basic soil health testing or advanced. So I have selected advanced, which will include PLFA. And then contacting the lab, this was their name for the CEMA 216 advanced package. So it's called Soil Health Advanced Core. And then you can see I went through the table and indicated which methods are going to be used for the specified indicators. And then on the last page of this document, it has a section for you to take notes, and then also to indicate what the lab is, what the lab guidance is as far as how to handle the sample. And so section 4 is lab guidance. You can see that the lab has asked me to submit per sample 2 to 3 cups of soil, bagged and kept cool. So I've indicated under sample storage until shipment. They've asked me to refrigerate it. And then their lab certification, they have NAPT PAP. And so under this section, I had asked some other questions and left notes here about that. So they've indicated that no sanitation is needed between collecting the subsamples for the composite samples or even the composite samples. But what is important is to remove any soil residue left on the tool between collections. They also said that I do not need to freeze, but they recommend refrigerating after collection, taking care to not expose soil sample to extreme swings in temperature when storing in fridge. Cooling is important because it decreases microbial activity. And then they recommended to ship the sample with ice packs the next day or within 2 days of collection, keeping it refrigerated until that time. Ideal to ship the sample overnight. And then because PLFA is included, will be included, it may take 2 to 3 weeks to process. If we weren't doing PLFA, I think this is similar to what Kyle was saying, is that it would only take a few business days. And so I asked about the method for collecting for wet aggregate stability. And at least what I was told by this lab manager is that the shearing that you get from the shovel on the sides will make a minimal / insignificant difference to the results, because what they'll do when they get the sample is they sieve the soil through a 2 millimeter sieve and then again through a sieve with an even smaller opening. So typical handling of the soil during collection is okay. So there's no concern about using a specific side of the hole for collection. So hopefully, Ross, that answers your question. I guess this could also be lab dependent. So again, another reason that it would be important to contact the lab and make sure they don't have special instructions about how to handle the soil for any of these indicators.
Yeah, if they're doing the wet sieve, then that will work fine. But if they're doing that slake method, the app, it's going to possibly mess things up. Even though
That's a
it's
good
only the
point.
size
So
of
yeah,
a pea that you use, I have my students do that too. If they're mashed peas, it's going to be a problem. It looks to me like.
sure. So yeah, I guess another, yeah, again, just solidifying the importance of contacting the lab to verify which method they're going to use for the analysis and if they have any special instructions about how to get the sample. So for instance, Dukenholtz, because of how they're, I guess, assessing that indicator, they have special instructions, right? So that makes sense, hopefully. um, so for this specific lab, they have an additional submission form that they want you to include with the sample. So I've included that here for you guys to see. So just basic contact information, and then they ask for some field history, and then an indication of which sample or which testing package we're submitting the sample for. And so, yeah, so that is the pre-work. We have our sampling strategy, we have our sampling points, we've verified with the lab any special instructions about handling and which methods they're using. And so with that, I'd say our pre-work is good to go. And so with that, for folks that are interested in joining us next week, again, this is where we'll be. And if you end up getting the PDF, or when you register, actually, we can send this additional information to you. But the University of Idaho Research and Extension folks have asked that participants park in this specific area. And so that links to a point on the map. And then the conference room where we'll meet is here. So again, GPS point maybe pretty close to the door of this building. There's only one conference room in the building. And then again, the link to the registration. So yeah, so this concludes this first part of our soil health sampling and CEMA 216 workshop. If you have any comments or questions regarding our infield person day, happy to address those now. And then if you have any follow-up comments or questions with us about this session, we've got the link to the form in the chat, and we will follow up with you in this next week, over this next week. Yeah, does anyone have any questions about next Tuesday? Well, not hearing any. Courtney, shall we go ahead and end today's session?
Sounds good. Thank you so much for all of your expertise, Lucille.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks for your help putting this together. Thank you to if any of our lab managers are still on the call. Thanks so much for sharing with us Thank you to Dean and Ross and Shanna for putting together your parts of the presentation. And for those joining us next week, we look forward to seeing you. And yeah, please feel free to fill out the form link if you'd like today's PDF or a copy of today's presentation in a PDF, and we'll get that to you. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.